What is up, guys? It's your boy Red Ghost, and welcome to episode 5 of the Nfinite podcast. And today I have some special guests with me. Both are friends of mine personally, but also they are competitors and also just longtime gamers and tech guys. So I would love to welcome Bonafide. Uh, his real name is Dustin. So welcome, Dustin. Welcome to the
And thank you
podcast.
for having me, Preston.
Not a problem, man. I'm glad to have you. And also would like to welcome back Nick, as this is his third iteration of the Infinite podcast, and it's great to have him back. So welcome, Nick.
How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Another day in paradise. Another day in paradise. But we have a lot to talk about, gentlemen. We have a lot to talk about. Now, the gaming world as a whole has kind of been shook from Fortnite suings to PUBG becoming the top of a sales or Steam sales chart and its incredible, mobile download spike, but also looking at the PS4, looking at its life, and that console solidifying itself as the best-selling console in history that truly makes a mark for Sony. And I don't know, it's quite interesting. We definitely have a lot to talk about today for sure. So I want to get into it, and I want to talk about the PlayStation 4. So the PlayStation 4, as as I said, has been deemed as the best-selling console of all time. Now, its numbers recently surged above the Xbox 360's numbers in quite an amazing turn. The amount of sales that it had through the week bumped it over and absolutely solidified its spot in history as the most popular and best-selling console of all time. Now, I definitely find this to be rather interesting as the 360 and Microsoft's, I'll call chokehold over the last generation. It's definitely an interesting turn of events as far as Sony is concerned and what they have done to not only improve their console, but improve their communication with their fan base. And I think with the PS4, right, we see a lot of that, and we see what's instrumented in that. And I'm really curious to see what they have, what they're going to do with the PS5. But I want to stay on topic. I want to talk about the PlayStation 4 now. Now, as far as the PlayStation 4 is concerned, what are things in your guys' mind that pops out that makes you think that the PS4 was the best-selling console? I mean, obviously it is. We have the numbers in, uh, but what in your mind truly solidifies that for you? And obviously, we're talking beyond numbers here and more or less a personal preference, but to an extent, there's a lot that goes into consoles, security and such a thing and things like that, as well as game selection and UI and several other different factors. But yeah, I just want to hop into it and see what your guys' thoughts are on that. So
Yeah, so I
Dustin,
mean, you
we'll
touched
start with
briefly
you.
on the security. When you look back on the PS3, how the online service was always free, and then Sony had that hack where basically all their networks were compromised for most of the summer, and Sony basically gave people, free indie games as kind of a way of saying, we're sorry the network was down, but they really didn't seem to have at the time a sense of urgency to get it fixed in terms of the console side. And
Mhm.
at the time, I think that kind of helped solidify the 360 because anytime 360 had an issue with the live, if it went down for any time, Xbox would give you back so much time. So if it went down for a week, they would typically add a month.
Mhm.
It didn't happen often, and even when it did, Xbox was very upfront about it and would say, we are having server issues, we were compromised, we're getting it fixed, so we'll have it back up as soon as possible. And they did a fairly decent job with that going forward. So Sony decided to start charging for the online membership. They dropped the price, $10 from what Xbox charges. So in terms of that aspect, like people were, upfront mad about it. But as you can see now with, the amount of sales going through in terms of the online capability for
Mhm.
games, I think people have come to kind of more accept it from the gaming consoles. Whereas before you definitely had a choice between, this is what you want, or you can just play the games for free and not pay for the internet and kind of deal with the consequences if anything happens on their end.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree there. Security is something that is absolutely huge, right? And then when we're talking about the history, right, of the PlayStation 4, you can't help but mention the PS3 and talking about its shortcomings as well, and what Sony did to, clearly bring this console to, to the mainstream and the main light as, the best-selling console of all time. I definitely agree on the security, and as far as the pricing is concerned on the membership, I definitely agree. You had the 3-month membership when the PlayStation 4 first released, sitting at $17.99, and then you had your 1 year sitting at $49.99. And at the time, I was working. I'd say about a year after its release, I was working at Walmart in electronics. Uh, for those who don't know, yes, I used to work in a Walmart in electronics. Um, but I remember specifically talking to people, and obviously I'm a big nerd myself, hence the gaming podcast. But I absolutely just love talking to customers. I loved hearing what they had to say about the console and what made them choose it, because I felt it was very interesting. It was something that kind of just grabbed me. It was like, just ask the question, man, get an answer. So, I began to ask multiple different questions about it, and just to add to your point, that was definitely one of the things that was the persuasive factor, was the cheaper online. And then obviously in its lifetime, they brought the pricing to match Microsoft, but at that point in time, it didn't matter. It didn't matter. People were loving their PlayStation. They were loving the games that were coming out, and who cares if they paid $10 more? They were getting an incredible library of games to play, and I think that's definitely, another factor as well. But before we move on, Nick, I want you to touch on the security thing, or possibly something else that stuck out in your mind that made the PlayStation 4 the best-selling console
Um, I'm
of
gonna
our
have
time.
to say, and this is not really personal preference. I mean, yes, it is personal preference because of the programming background,
Sure.
but the PlayStation 4's GUI is the perfect example of what a GUI should be for a
Now, for
console.
those now
Period.
for those who don't know what a GUI is, Nick, explain what a GUI is and how it benefits the console. Just briefly.
A GUI essentially is the graphical user interface. It's what makes people like me, I translate what I see to what you want to see. You know, what you want to see on your home console, not necessarily what I would see on there. I would just see, the programming in, but you're going to see a very minuscule, just kind of cover picture, cover story of what we're doing.
Sure. Sure. But no, I agree, right? When you're talking about the GUI specifically, right? The PlayStation 4 did it perfectly. Um, the only thing, and obviously we're gonna get into the PS4 Pro and both the Slim, um, but obviously we're just talking about the standard PS4 at the moment. It's quite incredible what Sony did at the very start of this console war. It was just from what they chose for components, right? And just going back to what you were saying about the GUI, everything that was selected for a reason.
Yeah,
And
they had just the right balance between
mhm,
specs and affordability.
100%. And that's something that I think that Microsoft, right later on in its lifetime, which I want to talk about Microsoft a little bit also in this. Um, but around this time, right around the beginning of the PlayStation 4, um, Microsoft had a terrible beginning. I mean, as far as that's concerned, I'm talking about all the way to the comment that was made by the former, by the former head of Microsoft, saying that we have a console that can play offline. It's called the Xbox 360. When that comment and statement was made, I remember at that time the infuriation of the gaming community was in an uproar. Everyone thought that that comment that was made was ridiculous, and not only that, it really, people thought that maybe Microsoft doesn't have a hold on gaming anymore. Maybe they don't truly understand what it is and what we want. And that was a thought that went through my mind. I'm sure it went through a lot of other people's mind who owned an Xbox One at that time. So it's definitely interesting, right? And the people who bought Xbox Ones at that time, honestly, all those people were kind of like either Microsoft elitist or people who just love gaming consoles and love purchasing the new consoles when they release. You weren't gonna get that that what's the word I'm looking for? I'll, for lack of a better word, I'll say population of those gamers who played the 360 and who were attracted to it as kids. The PlayStation 4, right, was able to do that, and the Xbox One wasn't necessarily suited for the same type of community and population, if you will. Um, and the PS4 is just better prepared in that light, as far as that goes.
I I feel like the PS4 is just hands down a better console than the Xbox One.
As far as we're talking standard, we're talking standard PS4,
When we're
standard
talking
Xbox
the
One, hands
console, the
down,
hardware, build
hands
quality,
down.
UI, controller,
Yeah,
not talking about libraries.
yeah,
We're
yeah.
not talking about
Yeah,
libraries.
specifically talking about consoles only and what they have, right? Their hardware, their software, like what comes with them. I agree, wholeheartedly that the standard PS4 is simply a better console all the way around. It was built for consistency in 1080p. It was built for 60 frames a second. It was built for the gamer. It was built for the person, of that generation, of that time who had the nicest 1080p HD TV you could buy, and that was just something that was quite interesting, right? And I feel like a lot of people also alluded towards the PlayStation 4, also because of its power. But now, when we're talking about the PS4, right, I want to move a little bit further into its history, and let's talk about the introduction of the PS4 Pro and the PS4 Slim. Now, this is where this timeline gets kind of interesting. At the time of the release of the PlayStation 4 Slim and the PlayStation 4 Pro, a few months later, the Xbox One S, and then a few months later, the Xbox One X is released. And now you have the S and the X against the PS4 Slim and the PS4 Pro. And that was an interesting battle. But I want to stick to the PlayStation, for this conversation. Being that the console has truly earned it and earned its spotlight in any conversation as far as consoles are concerned. But now we move into the Slim and we move into the Pro. Now the Slim is a console which, for those who don't know, the PS4 Slim was essentially created to give people another to give people the standard PS4 option without some of the PS4 the standard PS4 additions, being like an optical port on the back of the console that was removed for the Slim, and it was re-imported for the Pro. As far as that is concerned, the PS4 Slim also carries it carries quite the same excuse me, it carries quite the same hardware as the standard PS4. It just has slight upgrades. It's not something that it truly in my mind is okay, sell your standard PS4, buy a Slim. That's definitely not as far as the PS4 Slim is concerned, that was definitely not the case. And as far as the PS4 is concerned, if we're gonna talk about the only thing it failed at, that was about the only thing was the Slim console or the Slim version of their console. But now, and now let's talk about the PS4 Pro, and then I'm gonna go into some questions for you guys. But the PS4 Pro, once it was released after the Slim, and it was made for 4K, it was made for upscale 4K, which at the time was the definitive technology that existed. Um, and and also I have to commend Microsoft on this for taking point and allowing Sony to make their move and allowing them to see everything play out and then know what to do for their next console. But moving forward with it, the PS4 Pro, when it was released, it ran every game that ever had an issue. It was supposed to boost it, give it better frame rate, give it better, just give you more options to be able to either place it, place your console to focus game performance, or maybe it's frames, or maybe it's just overall consistency of the game in general. So there's a lot of differences that the PS4 Pro was able to bring to the table, and something that the Xbox One X it honestly didn't do. So I found that interesting, but also what I found interesting also, and when we're talking about the history of the PlayStation 4, the PS4 Pros when they were first released had a ton of bugs. It was quite possibly one of the worst consoles that had released at that time just because of the amount of bugs that were presented in the console. Over time, once the bugs were fixed and numerous updates were done by Sony, which to your point, Dustin, when you were talking about urgency, they definitely showed urgency with the PlayStation 4 Pro. Um, they knew that if they didn't act to fix these issues, that it was quite possible that they were going to lose. As far as losing is concerned, and I'm quoting that, air quotations, but as far as that's concerned, you just have this really interesting, turn of events, especially when it came to Sony and it came to how they approached their consoles and their hardware. But the one thing I want to ask about, ask you guys, right? And as far as the details about the Slim and the Pro, what are two things, are just what, not even two things, but what are a few things in your mind that as far as the Slim is concerned, as far as the Pro is concerned, like what are things in your mind when you first heard about these consoles and their release? Kind of just talk about what was going through your head at that time, or maybe even talk about um just like the overall pricing and why the $100 difference maybe was just so as huge as it was, because I truly feel that from the Slim and the Pro the difference was astronomical.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing with that too was the hardware they put in it. The Slim was just uh, a better version of the regular PS4 that came out when they first launched it. The Pro, they put a lot more in terms of hardware in to run games more smoothly, in terms of even the hard drive in the system, the capacity to run the games, to stream even 4K content. Like, you obviously have to have a faster processor to run the 4K content without causing an issue in the system. So in terms of that, like, that's going to justify just the price point itself. So, like, yeah, obviously when they first make consoles, there's always going to be bugs. They'll make them smaller, they'll make them faster. But when you jump from the Slim to the Pro, like, you notice the difference. It's like going from the S to the
Yeah,
X. Like, you notice
it's
the
huge.
difference, and you're going to
Oh
spend
yeah,
the
no, I
money.
agree. I definitely agree there. Nick, do you have any comments about it? Like, were there anything, or just maybe a few things that may have went through your head once you saw the release of these consoles? Because I know that you owned a standard PS4, for a decent amount of time, and I know you owned an Xbox One as well. But when we're looking at the Slims, and I know you've had an opportunity to play on one of those as well as the Pro, um, as far as its announcement and everything at that time and moving forward, like what were your general thoughts about it?
The Slim did not catch my eye to any extent. I've never been a fan of the slimming downness of a console. The PS4 isn't that big in the first place. But as far as inside, the PS4 Pro wins hands down. I was very hyped for the Pro, but I haven't been in the console world since the Slim dropped.
I mean, as far as the Slim is concerned, right? And when we're talking about the slimming down of consoles, I'm in agreement with you there. And I think a lot of people may be like, well, why are you saying that? Being smaller should be better. In a sense, yes. But for those who don't know, or maybe they have no idea of how a console is built, or anything like that, I'd like to take a moment to educate you. The consoles and computers as well. Consoles are very similar to a laptop as far as building is concerned, and the reason why I say that is with a lot of parts of a console, you're pushing together, you're meshing with other parts so that they fit within your box, right? You want them to fit, but you don't want to overheat anything. You want to make sure that everything is in their correct position and it's going to run perfectly and it's going to run fine and not have any issues, right? That's the ultimate goal. But a laptop, for those who may not know, a laptop, its processor, graphics card, its hard drive, everything is meshed together. Everything is together, and like it's just it's almost like it's glued. It's really interesting. But But essentially, that's how a console is made. They take the ideology of what a laptop is and how it's put together, and then they take that information and obviously rework it a bit in order to look at their consoles in that light. Um, and for the PS4 Pro, and as far as the Slim is concerned, even though I own a Slim, I am not the happiest owner of it. Honestly, I mean, don't get me wrong, the library for the PlayStation 4 is fantastic. I'm not going to say any bad things about it because you can't. You absolutely can't. I mean, the game list is phenomenal. It's off the charts. It is literally the shit. And Sony did a phenomenal job in doing so. But when we're talking hardware and we're talking, as far as consoles are concerned, right? And Microsoft is guilty of this as well. When you slim down a console, you're taking away from it. You're not adding to a console as much as the X, even though it is smaller, and they did add a lot to the console, which kind of makes kind of backtracks my statement in a way. But at the same time, when the Xbox One X first released, there were several issues with the console, and not only that, people were also concerned that the Xbox One X wasn't water cooled. However, I want to continue, and I want to talk about the Pro. So now that the Slim is out and the Pro is out, and sales are kind of going crazy, right? Sony sees that people are buying the Pro. More people are taking the extra time to save up the extra $120 to purchase the Pro just to have a better, and a longer lasting console as far as it's concerned. Now, how we know that the PS4 Pro sold the most is simply by looking at Sony and what they did for their bundles. Now, I get it that the PS4 Pro is their best console, and obviously you're going to want to bundle games and make custom consoles, but essentially that that's what you're looking at. And with the PS4 Pro, we saw that it had a Spider-Man bundle with the exclusive Spider-Man custom console. The Slim did not receive that. Now they did a 500, excuse me, it may have been 50 or maybe 500 million. I cannot remember, but I believe it was a 50 million or something crazy. But they released an exclusive console, and they made a PS4 Pro version and they made a Slim version of that console. Now that is the only console that Sony has actually put in effort as far as making a bundle and making its own unique console for the Slim. That was the only one. So I definitely find it interesting in that light. But do you guys think that that Sony made the right move there? Because I would say yes all day long, just because of how much the console costs and things of that nature. But you have a Slim, it's $100 cheaper. You know that you would be able to sell more of them. I found it interesting that they moved to the Pro. Obviously, we kind of have an idea why, being that it's a better console. But when we're talking about the content or console bundles, do you think Sony should have possibly created both a Slim version and a Pro version of these custom consoles, or do you think that Sony did the right thing and sticking with the Pros and that? And also, I would like you guys to kind of talk about your favorite games about the PS4. Through its lifetime. I don't want you guys to talk about some key titles that stuck out in your mind that really, truly kind of, empowered the embodiment of Sony and what it truly stands for. So, Dustin, we'll actually start with you first, and we'll go down to Nick. What are your thoughts on the PS4 Pro? Do you think that they should have made two separate, or do you think they should have made two separate custom consoles for their bundles, or do you think that Sony made the right decision? And what are some key games that really stuck out in your mind? I mean, obviously one for me is Spider-Man, but there are definitely some other titles.
Yeah. In terms of them making two separate consoles, I think they were better off just sticking with the one with the Pro, because at the end of the day, the Slim is just another version of the original that came out. And if you look at the history of kind of consoles, regardless of both between Xbox or Sony, regardless if it was the Xbox, the 360, or the One, or the PS2, the 304, they always had a Slim roughly a year to 2 years after. They were able to fix bugs, technical issues in the game, get hardware that ran a little faster to help the games. But I just think in terms of Sony doing it, I think Sony kind of made the right decision in sticking with just the PS4 Pro and doing a limited one, because it gave people a reason to also buy the bundles, especially when a lot of the big titles that were coming out, they were doing the bundles with. So obviously Spider-Man 4 was one, Red Dead Redemption 2, is another one that they did a bundle
Yes, they did.
for.
Now they didn't. They
Um,
didn't do a custom console, which I was kind of surprised.
I'm not. I mean, it's one of
It's
those
Red
two.
Dead though. It's
It,
Red Dead.
it's Red Dead, but at the same time, they do a lot of the exclusive consoles for exclusive titles. They don't do it just
Mhm.
for games that share both platforms. Like they got to have a reason to do it. Like they don't
Sure.
they don't do one for Call of Duty typically. Like how Xbox does one for Battlefield sometimes. It really depends on what they put with it as to why they would do the exclusive consoles for the colors.
Yeah,
But
like the PS4 with Black Ops 3.
yes,
Yeah.
like exactly like that. So in terms of that, I definitely think Sony, did the right thing with just having the one console for the limited, skins. Some of the games that definitely stuck out to me in terms of even like newer ones were, Detroit Become Human. The God of War series has always
Yes.
been a massive series with them. The Uncharted series. I'm trying to think of another one. Until Dawn, Drive Club. I mean, Persona
Oh, so many.
5.
There's so many.
Like
Bloodborne,
Bloodborne's another big one.
Neo.
I just think Sony hunkered down and basically doubled down on the games to give people a reason to switch and to stay.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I want to touch on your game list because your game list is pretty close to mine, right? And we haven't finished the PlayStation 4 cycle, right? We still have life in this console, and we have games that are going to be coming out for it, including PS4 VR games as well. And I want to talk about the VR and its place in the console because it does have a spot and it does have an historical place, if as far as I'm concerned. And obviously the crazy development that we see in virtual reality, that we see in these newer editions and into these newer things of gaming. But I want to talk about God of War specifically, and the reason why I want to talk about God of War is because that God of War is quite possibly one of the best games I have ever played story wise. When we're talking story, I mean, now don't get me wrong, I love The Last of Us. The story is amazing. Uncharted, the same. However, that game really hit hard with me just because I'm a big fan of Roman and Greek mythology, and so obviously this game definitely captured my attention. But how it was done and how they took the history and completely revolved it around Kratos and truly made a real entry for him into the history that's already established. They definitely took a page out of Assassin's Creed's book as far as that's concerned. But man, that game is incredible.
Yeah, I think part of it
Absolutely
too is
incredible.
when they made God of War, they knew going into it that they were going to stick with Kratos through every game, iteration that they made, variation of it, regardless if it was for, console or handheld with them. And they kind of, doubled down with him being, an exclusive. Whereas, when you look at some of the games though too, like basically every game that, it continues off the last one. So like you beat the final boss in the first one and you think the game's over, and then it kind of leads into the second one. So Sony kind of had you at the, in terms of waiting, it had you waiting for the next game to come out and be like, I want to play this. And it built this character and it showed, development. And you look at this last God of War, it definitely showed a massive development in him compared to, him being this young character, or even in, his early like adult life, to where now he's older. You could see it with, the facial hair, the expressions that he uses, the voice, the fact that he has the kid with him through this one kind of definitely shows a different side of him, and kind of shows that the developers for God of War definitely are trying to grow the fan base and get new people introduced to it while still keeping that
No, I
core
definitely
fan base
agree.
there.
I definitely agree as God of War is concerned. Another thing that I really want to touch on too, right, is I thought it was a very interesting perspective that they took Kratos' son, and they were like, okay, what what do we do with this guy? Like how do we lead him into the story? What do we make him, and what do we do? Like, I watched a very very small interview that was done with the director of God of War, or the new God of War, excuse me, and and he was talking about the characters, he was talking about their placement, but the one thing that really stuck in his mind and it stuck in the studio's mind was this bond between father and son, and that's something that's really hard to do in a video game, right? especially when it comes to acting and trying to relay the realness, of that moment that's happening in that game. It's very difficult. The Last of Us is a phenomenal example of how to do it perfectly. And I think Uncharted is another great series as well. And for God of War to kind of take some of those elements from those other titles and to place it into their game and make it unique to their own, I found it to be phenomenal. I feel that God of War, this iteration of God of War, in my personal opinion, is the best PlayStation 4 game, hands down. In my opinion, that's how I feel. Now, don't get me wrong. I love Spider-Man. I love The Last of Us. I love Uncharted. I love, Neo, Bloodborne, Drive Club, like all these games that were exclusives. I truly have, I love for because they're great titles and have wonderful, wonderful amounts of work and love and passion that we're putting into these titles. And it's very hard not to love something, especially when you can tell how much love and hard work is there for it when you're playing the game itself. It's definitely interesting. But Nick, what were some of the titles that kind of stuck out in your head as far as the PS4 is concerned?
As far as exclusives, I I couldn't really tell you as far as exclusives because I never really played any of the
You
exclusives
watched it.
except for.
You
I mean,
watched.
I never touched God of War. I've never touched a single God of War game.
Oh my God.
Yes.
That's a sin.
You
You
were
have
missing out.
committed.
I know.
You have committed
I'm
3
sorry.
sins on this podcast.
I know.
3 sins.
I
I had to
know.
make this man play Far Cry, and now I gotta make him play God of War.
You've never played any God of War?
Never.
You're. I gotta get you to play it, Nick. I have to, man. I don't care if it's forcing you to sit in front of it and to play all the games.
I've just never had the opportunity. Honestly.
Fair enough. I mean, I
I never
don't
had a
blame you, man.
PS3. I never had a PS3, and by the time God of War came out, I'd already got rid of my PS4.
Fair enough. Yeah, I remember that.
To kind of like touch on one thing, not to get off like too much off subject. Thing I thought that was really cool about the Pro that no other console engineer has ever really touched on was that they added a gigabyte of DDR3 on top of the 8 gigabytes of DDR5. The DDR3 is dedicated just for streaming 4K in video applications. So like your Netflix and your Hulu 4K, it is all based on that 1 gigabyte of DDR3.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really, really cool addition that definitely didn't get as much FaceTime as it needed.
Oh no, I agree. Right. Honestly, it slipped my mind as well. Honestly, just to be frank with you, but no, that's definitely something to bring up, right? Because even the newer Xboxes, right, and we're talking about the X and the S, they don't really have. I mean, now the Xbox One X actually does, so excuse me on that, but the S didn't. And when the Pro, and when they had done that with the Pro, that was innovative, right? That was something that Sony did that truly changed the landscape of how consoles are made. And simple things like that, with just adding a gigabyte of DDR3 RAM, and what it did for that console in the long run is insane, absolutely insane. So thank you for making that point. It definitely slipped my mind, man, for sure.
But as far as exclusives go, hands down, I only have one because
Alright.
I forgot it was an exclusive. That would definitely have to be Detroit Become Human.
Dude, that game is awesome. Dustin mentioned it as well. And
Oh,
and that's a game that hasn't gotten a lot of love.
no.
It's definitely got attention and it's gotten detail here and there, but that was kind of one of those games that came out that were kind of overshadowed, right? It was kind of overshadowed by Spider-Man because it wasn't too much longer till Spider-Man was coming out. And and there were a lot of other things going on during that time, but I agree, man. Like Detroit Become Human might be one, like, and I'm gonna call it an RPG for just like a lack of a better term here. It's more than an RPG, but this specific RPG is it's incredibly insane. It takes things from Mass Effect and from older BioWare titles. Honestly, I could truly see the reference there with Detroit Become Human. Those iterations and just the multiple things that they did, and obviously that this game went through so many different levels. I mean, this game went beyond an alpha and a beta. This had pre-alpha and then a pre-alpha and then an alpha. This is a game that they took a lot of time on, and not just because the game takes a lot of time to make, but they truly wanted to get all of these elements that they were putting into the game, and they wanted to get it right. And not only did they want to get it right, but they wanted to make sense and how that developed into you when you were playing the game. And another thing I find interesting as well is Detroit Become Human is a game that you can play through multiple times, and you cannot have the same ending nor have the same things happen, which its replayability is through the roof at that rate. But not only is that phenomenal, but I also want to touch on I just want to touch on the fact that this game, it not only
It
like it solidified a lot of things.
it
I think it really solidified the processes and kind of brought it up to another standard.
basically, I was just making a point that, like, you made my point for me. It had several endings. Its replayability is something that you don't really have nowadays, and it's showing a new genre or shoving a new genre in your face.
Yeah, no, 100%, right? Detroit Become Human reminds me of a title that's created by CD Projekt Red. I mean, these guys, if you know CD Projekt Red, the creators of The Witcher, one of the most famous series of all time. Not only do you know that when you buy a CD Projekt Red game, that when you pay $60 for that game, you're getting so much more than $60 worth of content. And that's for those people, that truly love the world and love to, you know, involve themselves and kind of swirl themselves into it. But I thought it was really interesting for Detroit Become Human to kind of take a page out of their book as well and go, you know what? We're gonna give you the best amount of content that we can give, and we're gonna create this amazing story and these amazing plot lines, and you're gonna love it. And truly, that is what happened for those who play the title. If you have not played Detroit Become Human, please take the time out of your day to go up to the red box. All right, hit the graveyard, dig up Blockbuster. You need to play this game. It's absolutely phenomenal and it's incredible. And it's definitely among the top tier titles of the PlayStation 4's life. And I think we can all agree on that.
Absolutely.
Now, before ending the PS4 segment, there's something I want to talk about briefly. Is I want to talk about the PS4 VR. Now, the PS4 VR, right? And I just want to talk about it briefly. But the PlayStation 4 VR, right, is made by Oculus, and we see that virtual reality gaming is now finally being pushed, and it's kind of, the foot's on the gas pedal, and they're hitting it, and they're trying to hit it hard from what they're doing, with several different iterations. And I don't want to get into VR technology too much. I simply just want to talk about the PS4 VR and its impact. But when you're looking at the VR, right, and you're looking at Sony's relationship with Oculus, and you're looking at the VR and you're looking at everything moving forward, and also with them releasing a VR, or excuse me, not releasing, but it is rumored to be releasing is the PS4 VR 2, which is going to be obviously the upgraded version of the PS4 VR. Now, no one knows if this is going to come out for the PS4 or if this is something that may come out with the PS5. That is still to be determined. However, I find it to be really interesting that the place that Sony, of all companies to take a risk, Sony took that risk, and obviously it paid out for them. If you're interested in business sales or gaming sales at all, I truly recommend to look at the virtual reality numbers for a PS4 game sold. It's absolutely incredible, and the amount of units that were sold, um, per year, after its release, um, has been quite phenomenal as well, and it just seems to continuously develop. Now, I want to talk to you guys, obviously about this VR technology, but I want to talk about more than its numbers, but I want to talk about an impact and what it made for gaming and what do you see other companies doing? Now, Xbox is rumored to be having a virtual reality aspect or component rather that they are adding to their next console. Now, it's rumored there's nothing out officially. However, I find that to be super interesting. But Nick, Dustin, what are your guys'
Okay.
thoughts on that?
So with the VR coming to the PlayStation, it was definitely a huge risk just in terms of not only technology but how the people that play consoles were going to handle it. Just because at the time when they released it, VR really hadn't taken off between the console or the PC or even doing the VR with the phones, and they were like companies were trying to figure out the right way to do it,
Yeah, it was
and then
very new, very new.
and once certain companies kind of figured out the right, well, lack of a better term, niche for what they were looking for with it, it definitely kind of helped when people realized that it could be a whole nother gaming experience. I won't go too in depth with it. The biggest thing that I think Sony's just going to have to focus on going forward is the technology in it, because they're going to be, I think they're going to be limited based on what they have in the console compared to PC.
The limitations, right? They're definitely shown. If you play any of the VR titles, you could definitely tell of its limitations. Now, everyone remembers that there was a trailer that was released, and there was a game demo specifically released. It was the PT demo, and it was supposed to be the new Silent Hill. It was going to be the new Silent Hill, and it was going to be a VR experience. Now that company, believe it or not, got, during that time and during its announcement, had gotten some type of a backlash from it, almost in a way, because in we're talking mainstream backlash at this point, um from people saying that you shouldn't create a game, that, or a virtual world that's horrific, and place someone in that. That's not something that they should do. And that was something that was talked about, briefly, amongst Sony, their peers, and so on and so forth. However, when Resident Evil 7 Biohazard came out, PlayStation had released that the game was compatible with PlayStation 4 VR. Now, we know that the PT demo, that game will never be released, and has since been changed into a separate title that is being made, that we hope to find out more information about during the PlayStation experience coming up this year, or excuse me, next year. So, as far as that's concerned, it's definitely interesting. But Nick, do you have any comments on that also?
On PT or just VR as a whole?
VR, its technology, and really what it did, and the kind of its impact into the gaming world, and what we can see, with this moving forward. And obviously, I don't want to go too in depth. We'll probably be here talking about it for the next 4 hours if we did that. And I don't think someone's going to listen to a podcast for 4 hours. If they do, fantastic. We love you for it. We absolutely love you for it. And maybe we might have to do something like that for you guys. Who knows? If that's something you guys want, clearly and gladly we will do it. But moving forward, yeah, just kind of give me your opinions on it, and what you felt about the VR, and what it did for gaming.
Okay, well, first off, PT was nothing short of godly. The demo,
Oh,
nothing
absolutely
short of
amazing.
godly.
Nothing,
Okay,
and it was a demo. Like, that's the
exactly.
crazy
That
thing,
is what a
right?
demo should
Dude,
be.
that
It
not
had
only
alternate endings to a demo.
Dude, not only were there alternate endings, but there were alternate things that would happen. Like,
Yeah,
you could go down the same corridor, and you know that the third door on the right is gonna have that creepy bitch, and it's gonna pop out at you and get you. But nah, dog, you're going down this corridor this time, and it's the first door on the left, and it catches you off guard, and it's
yeah.
crazy. But no, obviously I didn't want to cut you off.
You're fine.
I definitely had to comment. I
Um,
definitely had to comment.
as far as the VR goes, it's a great step forward. To bank more on what you said, I'm definitely for like to see what they can do to merge affordability and performance as far as VR goes. It's definitely something that's going to be a challenging task. Very, very challenging task because of affordability. The Oculus launched for $600 base. Can you imagine including that with a PS5?
Yeah,
It
that would be insane.
that
That would be an
could
insane
be
price point.
potentially, yeah, a potential very price point, and it's scary, but at the same time it's cool to see what could come forward because Beat Saber is a phenomenal game. Beat Saber got me into VR.
I think it got a lot of people into it. I see more and more videos of Beat Saber than I do of anything else. And I want to add to your point, Nick. And I was talking with a buddy about this when I went over to his house, and we were talking about VR and stuff like that. But I think Beat Saber did something that a lot of people didn't notice. I think it went over people's heads. But what it showed, right, just to add to your point, was that the technology for a VR music game that's based on tempo and based on you hitting, I'll call them skill shots for a lack of a better term here. I'll call them skill shots, bro, because you gotta hit them. Skill shot, bro. But as far as that goes, right? I think with VR, we could possibly see the return of games like Rock Band and Guitar Hero. Games that we loved playing on their of the older iterations. But that's something we could see, and that is
You
incredible.
could play
Imagine,
alongside with the band.
but here's the thing, right? Imagine we all have VR headsets on, and I look to the left and I can see you, and you can see, and you look to the right and you see me, and I can raise my hand at you with my drumstick, and I can tap it like 1, 2, 3, right before I'm about to play, and it's cue time. Like, imagine that happening,
That would
right?
be awesome.
That would be the sickest gaming experience. And then at that point, if you're a musician, you're a gamer too at that point, because there is no way in hell you're not purchasing that. Or you're not gonna, just be in love with it, because the one thing about musicians, or just artists in that light, right? And I don't want to go too off topic, but that's something that they always dream of. They always dream of playing in front of a crowd and stuff like that, right? So I hope that in the future we see games like Rock Band return, Guitar Hero return, even DJ Hero return. I mean, hell, if you gave me a hip hop hero, I'd do it. I'm freestyling. I'm picking up the mic. I'm doing it, man. I'm doing it. But just in all seriousness, like, I really think that you know that Beat Saber did that, and opened that avenue for potential games, like in that genre.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I would be very happy to see some more Guitar Hero games. Definitely.
I'd blow my mind, like, it'd be done, dude. I'd be done. I'd be like, oh my god, I can play Guitar Hero in VR. What is this, dude? What is this? Like,
And not,
I'd be flipping it.
and
I'll
I'm
probably
sorry.
will be like 35 years old when this game comes out, and I'm still gonna jump and like look like a 12-year-old through the window, hands down.
And I don't necessarily like the push that Rock Band like made into like the actual guitar. If I want to play an actual guitar, I'd pick up an actual guitar. If I wanted to have fun and strum along to some buttons that are corresponding, then I'm going to play Guitar Hero. I don't like the merge to actual guitars. That was a very bad move in my eyes.
Speaking of that, right? Remember a game that came out called Rocksmith?
Rocksmith
It
was
was
terrible.
Rocksmith.
Rocksmith was awful.
Rocksmith wasn't that great of a game. I agree. But the one thing that it did, and that it did very well, and then even musicians backed it up,
Yes.
it taught you
It
how
taught you to
to
play
play the
guitar.
guitar. It taught you
Yes.
how to do it. And it really, I mean, like, by the time you put 6 months into that game, you were playing guitar and able to play full songs.
Yeah.
And maybe we could see something like Rocksmith, right? That type of technology mixed in with something like Rock Band or Guitar Hero with VR. I think that would be, dude, that would kill it. I mean, if please, Guitar Hero company, Rock Band company, listen to my pleas, please. I will buy it. You can has my money. It has all of it. But yeah, no, right. So and just like when we're talking about VR, and we're talking about the impact it made, and what it did for gaming, right? Like, there's definitely a universal agreement here that it did quite a lot, and it made the step forward that gamers have been trying to make for years. And I'm talking about starting all the way back to the old Nintendo VR console, where you put on these red goggles, and all you saw was red. That's it. You saw red and black. That was it. And obviously that console did not succeed. However, Nintendo was on to something. And and I'm just I'm very, very happy. I'm very glad for gaming as a whole that this technology was implemented and we have a future with this technology. So that to me is quite incredible. And I know, and I definitely can see it for you guys also. Being that we're just overall gamers and having technology advance in that way is incredible. So that is going to end our PS4 segment. We're going to be taking a small break, and we'll be coming back with our next topic as we're going to be talking about Fortnite and the suings that are happening around with it. So yeah, so stay tuned, guys. We'll be back. What is up, guys? This is your boy Red Ghost, and I'm here to bring you an official announcement. Today, we're going to announce that we have picked up a new streamer. Welcome, Repub, to the Nfinite family. All right, guys, what's up? Welcome back to the Nfinite Podcast, and thank you for giving us just a short intermission, just a little short break. But we're going to move into it. We're going to move into the next topic. We're going to be talking about Fortnite and its current legality issues. But also, I want to talk about PUBG, possibly the influence that Fortnite is getting, possibly helping out PUBG. And we're going to be talking about that, and we're going to be kind of debating on it a little bit and going from there. So, Dustin, let's go ahead and talk about this. Now, there are a few people suing Epic Games, and these sues go from, anywhere from the guy who played Carlton on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, from his dance to the Millie Rock dance and more. We have so many people that are going after Fortnite, but and we were talking briefly right before we came back from intermission, but Dustin had brought up an excellent point that now this is all happening once the game has all this money and it's starting to import its money and its profits into its competitive scene and really growing their game. But now once this game had its rise in popularity and it kind of has stuck in the mainstream, it really seems that a lot of people are simply gunning after Epic Games and their creation of Fortnite simply because of its popularity. And if maybe they weren't so popular, do you think that this type of stuff would happen, or do you still think that people would take legal action? Because when you're really looking at it, it seems like there are just a lot of people that are fishing for a buck. Now, I get it, that people are using things that maybe you created or you came up with, but and I hate to sound like that guy, I really do, but that is your fault for not trademarking it. That is your fault for not copyrighting it. It's your fault for not buying or purchasing rights to that. Now, obviously, it sounds a little silly to say that you're going to trademark a dance. Come on, dude. Come on. No one does that. It might be the time to do it. Especially in a gaming era where microtransactions are, the biggest influence in a title and really what truly generates the most revenue for games and is able to support such an incredible competitive scene. Um, but what do you think? What are your thoughts on it, Dustin? As far as these concerns are.
So just kind of briefly, I'm gonna go back to the people that have confirmed to have cases pending or cases that have been reported are going against Epic. One of them is, a lot of people know, as the Backpack Kid. Another one is 2 milli for the Millie Rock, and obviously Carlton or Alfonso Ribeiro. I It's one of those things where it's like, yes, I definitely agree with you that you shouldn't, like, if you don't have copyright, you really don't have a ton of room to stand on with it. And in terms of the games being big, we've seen other games use other people's names or information or what they call property and never had an issue with it. The funny thing is, with the kid for the one with the flossing dance, he's been at the Epic tournaments before. It's like he was at the last, like, one of the last big tournaments. So it's kind of one of those where it's like, I feel like part of it is where the games have becoming so big that people are trying to feel like they're getting, lack of a better term, what they feel they deserve from it. But at the same time, like, if you make something, like, get the copyright. Now, going for, like, suing Epic for copyright infringement, it's going to be kind of hard because none of them have anything copyrighted yet. Now, some of them are in the works from what I've read, but from
Two
Polygon
are,
and a few other.
yeah, I believe there's two that are pending, right, as
Uh,
copyrights.
yes, the flossing dance from the Backpack Kid and the Carlton. The Millie, I don't know if the Millie Rock from 2 Millie, if he's doing it, but I know Carlton said he has, and I know the kid from the Backpack Kid, according to Polygon.com, have copyright request in. So that's going to make it a little difficult too in terms of going to court, because the judge could potentially throw it out and say, you didn't have this copyrighted. They're in no, breach. Now, if they sue for intellectual property, it's a little different.
Yeah, yeah.
Basically, what it is if you're known that you are the creator, inventor, whatever you want to call it, of something specific like the flossing dance or the Carlton dance or the Millie Rock, then that's a little different. Then I could see them, having a case. I guess it's really going to depend on the judge they get, what happens going forward, if they settle, in or out of court. It'll just be one of those things that if they settle out of court, you're not really going to see a ton of. You're just going to kind of, not see anything else in terms of them being in the news. But I do agree that it's one of those things where, like, if something gets popular and something else gets used in it and makes them grow even bigger, they definitely feel like they should have something from it, kind of as, like, being a part of them getting to where they're at.
No, I agree. I do agree. And obviously with with what I said, I truly do feel, right, if you've created something and it's something that is loved by people and is truly an influence, right? Like the Carlton dance is an influence of pop culture. I mean, Fresh Prince of Bel Air, in my personal opinion, is still one of the greatest shows ever made. Not only just because of its characters, but just the 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 acting is phenomenal, but not only that, the comedy is out of this world. It's really good. And when we're talking about someone like Alfonso Ribeiro, I hope I pronounced his last name correctly. If not, I probably butchered it, but I apologize. However, with him, specifically, right, and as far as the I or intelligent property argument is concerned, right, when you bring it up to a judge and he's looking at this case, I agree, right? Like the intelligent property, it could possibly be what is the downfall and what makes these certain individuals gain something from Epic Games. However, at the same token, I think that uh it should really be viewed and looked at, because I feel like this is something, this is we're moving into more, and obviously I am not a lawyer, I am not someone who studies law, but we are moving into more of a cyber based law, or excuse me, law reform, if you will. And I don't mean all of our laws. I simply mean the addition of extra laws that are for the internet, they're for intellectual properties and things of that nature. And obviously there are things that are already there that are already made and have a base and a place in our justice system. However, when you're talking about this in particular, especially with these Fortnite cases, right, and in the fact that these dances are being used, dances is not something that people legitimately thought would be, something they had to do. I mean, like, if you think of Crank That, right, you think of Soldier Boy immediately. If you think of Millie Rock, think of 2 Millie. Like there are obviously those individuals that people think of when that dance is done. And obviously at that point, right, I think the general consensus is that that person came up with that, right? As far as that's concerned, that argument can definitely be made there. But I also feel at the same token that it's, that it possibly could go into the favor of Epic, being that there were no copyrights that were pending during that time. There were no moves that were made towards owning any of this, any of these dances, or microtransactions, if you will, into the game. So it's definitely one of those interesting cases, right? But something I want to add on to this also, right? And we're talking about Fortnite now. Now Fortnite dealing with legal cases, the saying is there's no such thing as bad press, right? That's the old saying. Now, the what it refers to, for those who may not understand it, essentially what it's referring to, that if it gets out there, it gets out there. As long as it gets out there, right? That's the kind of the mindset there with that type of quote. However, at the same time, when you're looking at a game like Fortnite, and being that it's a battle royale, and being that its primary rival is Player Unknown Battlegrounds, I feel that, even though there is, this, I guess you could call it a stain of an image, if you will, on Fortnite, I truly think that people are, learning more about what Fortnite is, right? Because I think there's a lot of parents and a lot of people that know what Fortnite is. Like, it's a video game, and you have characters, and you have to kill other players and be the last one remaining to win, right? But people know that, but they don't necessarily understand maybe what Battle Royale is, or other Battle Royale titles. And maybe Fortnite was the only one that they knew of, thought that it existed. And I think that from Fortnite, we're starting to see more. I truly think that we're starting to see kind of like a bit of a conversion into the favor of PUBG, being that its Steam sales have raised, but not only that, it has over 200 billion PUBG mobile downloads. The mobile version of the game, which you could purchase for free if you go to your Google Play Store or your Apple Store or Apple iTunes Store. You can download the game there. And if you are a PC player, you can download PUBG on your computer, as well as downloading it on both Xbox and PS4, for those who do not know. However, moving forward, I think that with with all of this happening, in turn kind of favoring PUBG, in the conversion rate that I talked about, and all of the recent success that it's had, I truly think that we're just in the beginning of battle royales. Now, people may be sick of battle royales, and and maybe be sick of the game type, or maybe its influence on multiplayer gaming. However, if you're a true gamer and you really do love video games, there isn't really anything bad you can say about it. In terms of battle royales, even though I know it's gotten a lot of hate, but I think with, just to sum up my point, all this publicity and all these things that are happening, I think that we're starting to see battle royale kind of climb the ranks again slowly. It was something that was super popular and everyone loved, kind of died down for a little bit, but people are slowly picking it back up, and are slowly seeing that it's more than a fad. It's here to stay. And that's something that I think in a lot of people's minds really is what they wanted to see be concrete, um, within the battle royale games, and those titles that are there. Um, but what do you think about it as far as that goes?
I honestly think that gaming and games in general come and go in waves. And basically, what'll happen is you'll get a stretch of years where look between Halo and Call of Duty, for example, those were the two biggest selling titles year in and year out. And then Kingdom Hearts would come out, and they ended up getting like a niche where they were a top selling game for years. I just think it's battle royales now have become popular again at the right time when everybody wanted something new. And with this, it's definitely allowing the aspect of playing against people while still playing with friends, and allowing them to not be in the same kind of category with, like I said, Call of Duty or Halo, where it's a team of 4 to 5, and it's super competitive. I mean, Fortnite does have its competitiveness, but it's just different jumping into Fortnite than jumping into one of those where it's like people definitely get mad, or upset, angry, whatever you want to use, when they lose a game on Call of Duty or Halo, where on Fortnite it's just kind of, you do get those players that obviously get mad to make a living off of it. But then there's a lot of the players that just play to play it because of how popular.
Yeah, and I think popularity, right, is something that has, and plagued is the wrong word to use here, but I'll say influenced a lot of these titles, and kind of really has influenced society in general, I mean, if you talk to anybody, they know what Call of Duty is. They know what Halo is. They know what Gears of War is. And they certainly know what Fortnite is and PUBG. And the mainstream attention that Fortnite is getting, as well as the mainstream success that PUBG is having, and recirculating itself. But I want to go into a bit more about PUBG because it's honestly more than just a luck streak and this legal battle with Epic Games. I definitely want to go into the details of what PUBG or Bluehole has done in order to improve PUBG in every aspect, right? From adding a battle pass to adding better skins and better apparel, and adding gun skins into the game, and really listening to the community. And they had this whole big effort on Fix PUBG, and I know we talked about this in a previous iteration of our podcast, and they kind of dropped it all, which was super unfortunate. And but when they announced that they were working on stability of the games for both their console, PC, and mobile versions of their game, I found that to be like um, quite wonderful to hear, because that means that they understand. Okay, we know we have issues with our game, but we need to make sure we get our ducks in a row and we get our platform, you know, safe. We have a great foundation and we can build on that. And I think that PUBG and it's truly taking the necessary route it needs to in order to kind of bring itself back to the popular battle royale. Now, obviously, there's another battle royale that is in competition, if you will, and that is going to be Blackout. Now, I'm not going to touch on Blackout a ton, but I will say that they just recently released on PC only. I'm not sure if it will be coming to consoles. However, on PC, you can purchase just the battle royale version of the game, or you could purchase the multiplayer portion of the game. Excuse me. Uh, so I find that to be interesting as well, and I think obviously that adds another level of depth to the battle royale competition. But in the same light, I truly think that as long as Bluehole and the entire PUBG team, as long as they continue to listen and continue to do what they're doing, their numbers are going to rise. Their numbers are going to remain consistent. But not only that, I think that if they truly just fully commit to stabilizing the game and then fixing all the issues that are wrong with it, PUBG could resurface as another popular title once again. It's very plausible. It doesn't happen often in history where we get a title that's popular, it dies down, and then comes right back up. That's not something you see often, but that's something that I can see happening with PUBG just because of their dedication towards their game. And Epic Games has had that same type of dedication towards Fortnite and Treyarch, with Blackout. However, it's with these this legal battle happening, or excuse me, legal battles happening with Epic Games. And obviously, they have a legal team and people that are handling that. However, it definitely is a detriment on the studio. And it's definitely, it's definitely like a time that studios definitely don't like, and definitely a portion that they don't want to be in. They're just there to create. They're there to create for a community of people that enjoy what they've created. So again, it's all very interesting when we talk about the battle royale games, their impact, and when we talk about their separate entities and what each one has done. It's definitely quite interesting in that light, for sure.
Yeah, I think too part of it is with, like you said, if the game resurges, it definitely comes down to them, putting, the time in to fix it again. I
Sure,
think part of them dying was the fact that they thought they couldn't be touched. Now, I mean, obviously
I
we may be
agree.
wrong on that.
I
We could be entirely wrong on that. But I think what happened is PUBG kind of exploded into a scene where there wasn't really anything, and then it had this multiplayer aspect of one versus everybody, and it really drew people in. And then the PUBG was having the tournaments. You and I saw it at DreamHack Atlanta.
mhm.
I mean, PUBG really didn't have any competition. So, I mean, H1Z1 was there, but I think H1Z1 was kind of having issues, and PUBG, in terms of running on PC, wasn't really having a ton.
Yeah, it was having less issues. I remember at that time, right? Because Player Unknown, which is the gentleman's name who helped to create H1Z1, he had a different vision for the battle royale game of H1Z1,
Than
and
what it
that's where
was.
than what it was, and that's where PUBG came from. But no, yeah, I agree, right? It didn't have a lot of competition. It was, it was at the top of the list. There was nothing else there. They thought they couldn't be touched. And honestly, I agree. I agree. If you look at it, it kind of looks like cockiness. And if you look at the beginning of PUBG and leading into, from going from an early access release title to its full title and to now, if you look back on it, it truly looks like that. So I definitely agree with you there for sure.
It looks like an entirely different game.
Yeah, it does. It's a completely different game now than it used to be.
Well, that's
And
like I have it on console. I have it on the Xbox One. I don't have like the S or the X. I still have the original Xbox One. Well, scratch that. I actually have the Halo 5 Xbox. But like when I first got PUBG and they were like, "Oh, download it and it runs on Xbox One X." Like it was unbearable to play on the regular
oh, it
Xbox
was. I
One.
remember buying it the day it released, and it was horrid. It was
It,
absolutely horrible.
it I honestly thought it was a waste of $30.
It felt like it. It definitely felt like it.
And I was like, I'm not buying a console to run one game.
Yeah, no, for sure. Especially in right, and like another thing too that I want to touch on, um and this happens with every gaming company and every console company. Uh they will advertise a game, and obviously this game is made for a later iteration of their console and not an earlier one. And obviously during production, obviously they take into the account all the systems that are out there and available to people and consumers. But at the same time, I think too often we see that something is kind of rushed to just get it there. And I think that PUBG was a victim of this, especially with its port to console, as the version of the game that was ported to console was absolutely terrible on PC. And people were still having issues with that build on PC. And when you take that and push it into a console where you're not sure if it's or stability, and you're not sure what it's gonna do, you know, I'm in agreement with you. I really think that from here on out, if you're gonna create multiple iterations of a console, you should create a game that has different resolutions, that you can change the quality of the game. You just like a PC title. I believe that console games, if they gave you that ability, I think that we would start to see people, like be able to play, like for example, right? Like if you had that option when it came out, you could have turned down its settings and you could have still played the game. It wouldn't have been as bad, and it would have been bearable at that point. However, you're not able to do that, right? So you have to wait for the company to push out an update to make the game run consistently. Where if they did do something like a video setting, they could, it would help them in their favor, right? It would give them a chance to work on the game and stabilize it, and get it to where all consoles could play at um, you know, the highest tier that the game could provide. And it would read your specs correctly, and go from there. I think that if they would have had something like that in the game, um, people on console would have had less problems with PUBG. Um, but again, right, that's something that I hope that console gaming has in the future. I know that that is something that is geared towards PCs. And I know that you buy a console, and when they show the trailer of the game, that's the game that you expect. And I agree. However, at the same token, when you have these other iterations of consoles, you have to have something there, right? Otherwise, Dustin, just to your point, people are just going to get frustrated with the game and not want to play it at all.
And I think that's part of the reason why Fortnite boomed so much on console too, was regardless of which one you had, it loaded the same. It
Yeah.
wasn't It wasn't like it, like where it had PUBG, where it had what they called, or we would call constant, like a rendering bug, where stuff wouldn't load in, and your guy was just kind of sitting there floating when you first jumped in, so you were kind of just stuck. And then somebody that had it on the One X was able to just load it in super quick, grab the weapon, and basically get the free like the jump on you.
Yeah. And another thing too, right? Is I feel that like internet or just your internet connection, your overall ping as well, it had a lot to do with it as well. I remember at the beginning of PUBG on Xbox, even if you had a 20 ping or like a 10 ping, right? You would still lag incredibly. Like the only time someone wasn't lagging or getting some type of frame skip is if they were playing on an Xbox One X and if they had like 1,000 up, 1,000 down internet or something close to it. That was kind of where you saw the game stabilize, right? And I'm using air quotes over stabilize just for the simple fact that obviously the game wasn't at that point, and but people who had spent the $500 on the console and things like that, right, they were benefiting from it and they were able to enjoy that game. But like as you said, other people that had purchased it on the original Xboxes, like myself, um, had a horrible experience, and people even playing on the Xbox One S had reported several problems with the game and with its stability. And it was also reported that the Xbox One X at that time was the only console that was running that game effectively, as far as the Xboxes are concerned. Um, but no, I definitely find that like definitely interesting, right? And as far as that light is concerned, um, and yeah, it's definitely it's something that I feel it's something that I feel in the future is it is going to be like a huge determining factor with consoles and with stability and consistency of titles. And not only that, I think that gives other or it gives companies that are creating consoles, right? It gives them the ability and the warrant to make multiple consoles and truly make separate tiers of each console. Um, that way, that way when you purchase whichever one, you know what you're getting right away out of the box. There are no worries. You understand what games you're going to be able to play at this level and what games you're going to be able to play at the highest level. And truly, I hope that we see in the future some type of that involved within console gaming as a whole. Um, but yeah, but Dustin, I want to ask, do you have any final on the Fortnite legality battles that are currently happening, PUBG, and the sales record it's made moving forward?
In terms of PUBG, I definitely think we have a consistent, not only fan base, but when you have like a consistent group of people, regardless if it's Fortnite, PUBG, H1Z1, and they want like the battle royale, or people are getting into it, they're gonna jump to one of those three. And it really depends on the age. I feel like too with some of the stuff, because Fortnite definitely is geared more towards a younger crowd, just based on graphics, animation, and stuff like that.
Sure.
Where PUBG is definitely geared more towards an older crowd, just based on feel and kind of mechanics.
Yeah, it's very
All
tactical. It's like more of a
Yeah.
tactical based battle royale for sure.
So I mean, you're gonna have those people that after a while, some do get bored of Fortnite, as you've seen with some of the streamers or people looking for other battle royales, and PUBG is making the effort to change it, and people are jumping on it and seeing that it's improved compared to launch on consoles. They're willing to give it a shot, and I think that's the biggest determining factor right now, is that they're willing to make the changes to fix it
No,
and
I
try to
agree.
have a sense of urgency. In terms of the Fortnite legality going on with the court cases, I mean, I honestly don't think we'll see anything settled in court. I
I don't
think
think we
they'll
will either.
I think they'll settle out of court. I think after it is the only time they'll be able to go and copyright it. As far as I know right now, the only patented dance move is the moonwalk from Michael Jackson.
That move is patented
Yes, like Michael owns the rights to that dance.
or used to
Well,
own
now
it. His family owns it.
now his family does, but at the time of him being alive, he is the only person that I've been able to find so far that actually has any kind of legal actions towards having a dance move.
Yeah, I remember back. I'm, you know, I'm a bit older for those listening. I'm 25. But
Really
back in the
old.
day, I'm not too old. All right, Dustin's a little older than me. But however, I remember on the Sega Genesis there was I believe it was Sega Genesis. I could be wrong. Could have been the original Nintendo. Regardless, I can't remember which console it was specifically, but I remember a game that had Michael Jackson, and you did his signature moonwalk move and his spin, and his signature hold his crotch and go hee hee. Like those are things that that are signature to him. And when that game was made, and when I was a bit younger, I had gotten interested within some of the legal issues with gaming, just because that I actually had a gaming class and that was geared towards game development. However, we would always talk about gaming in general, and made it like a very interesting and introspective class in that right. Um, but moving forward, we did study that, and what we were, or what came of it was just the paperwork that went involved for just him to okay that dance into the game was kind of crazy, right? And now that we're looking into it, Michael Jackson was onto something. The Pop King was onto something when he patented the moonwalk. And I think that now, right, we're gonna see a lot more of it. We're gonna see a lot more people doing it, and it's gonna turn into the new fad, because the moment someone comes up with a game, or excuse me, not a game but a dance for the game, you're gonna see patents, trademarks, copyrights, whatever the case is. Uh, you're gonna see tons of that everywhere. Um, but that is going to do it for our segment on Fortnite and PUBG. Now, obviously, I would like to say congratulations to Bluehole and their title, as PUBG has raised to the top of the Steam sale charts, as well as their incredible milestone for downloads of their mobile version of their title. And as far as Epic Games is concerned, being a fellow North Carolinian company, I've only had one opportunity ever in my life to go down to Epic Studios. So I was never let in the front door, or I was let in the front door, but I couldn't go anywhere past that. Um, uh, but I just remember going there to the studios briefly, which is awesome. However, I truly do hope that those things get figured out. And it's kind of it's definitely a pain, and it's a growing pain with microtransactions and with development of microtransactions, right? Or like as far as skins or dances are concerned, it's something that it's something that's going to need a lot of attention. And I really that in the future, you know, we see some things handled, a bit more clearly, and possibly just a bit more sternly as well, and a bit more urgency also. However, that is going to do it for that segment. And now I would like to present to you the PC Corner. Now, the PC Corner is a new addition to the Infinite Podcast. Now, the Infinite Podcast, as we present an episode every single week, we're also going to be presenting you a weekly PC build that is built around the budgets of popular consoles or popular builds, and give you an idea of what to buy and what to build in order to get yourself to PC gaming. If you're not a console guy, PC gaming is where it's at for you, and the Infinite Podcast is where you need to come in order to get the information you need to build the best PC you can for your buck. So I want to go into it, and obviously we're going to welcome back Nick. So Nick, I'd like to thank you again for your time and coming onto the podcast today. But we have a build that you have comprised for us, and I love hearing them. I love hearing these builds. But we're going to go into it. How much is the build, that we're looking at, and what are some of the parts that are in this build, and what type of
Well,
PC is it?
we're definitely launching into the fact of the $500 build, the ideal $500 build, which is, I know you asked for a $400 build, but being on a $400 budget on a PC isn't really going to cut it without cutting out a graphics card almost entirely and
Sure.
and relying solely on the processor's
So
graphics.
for $400, it would be kind of
it would
I
it would
wouldn't
be
say a waste of time, but it would be better just to
it would be a
save
bare
up.
bones PC.
Okay.
It would
All
be
right.
bare bones.
So we're talking $500
Yeah.
on this PC build. What are we looking at? What do we need to buy in order to get this PC build going?
So $500 build, Ryzen 3 1200. AMD Ryzen 3, wonderful, wonderful processor. Yes, there are greater processors out there, but they also boast that very, very high profit, or not profit, but price. The AMD Ryzen 3 is still at a pretty decent price point, and it's still a very reliable processor. Um,
Fantastic.
Now, as far as RAM, I'm always going to just recommend uh, Corsair, and 8 GB is substandard. I mean, 8 GB will get you everywhere you need to get in
But
RAM.
16 is kind of the standard nowadays for PC gaming.
But
Being that we're seeing like more games, right, with more graphical, output
right,
from them.
but I'm talking solely based on to compare to a console
Mm-hmm.
graphically, it requires $500
Fair enough. So we have
because
the AMD. Oh,
because
sorry,
it
I didn't
is
mean to cut you off.
you're fine. It's just the PS4 and the Xbox. Just think of how many years they've had to fine tune those into, affordability and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
We're relying based on my studies
Sure.
and what, I can research. So there are definitely some push and pull towards the console end, but PC is always going to be my recommendation. But anyways, diving back into that, uh, I would definitely go with a solid state. Um, any brand, realistically, it doesn't matter. Your solid state at least needs to have your operating system on it and a couple of the games that you play on a day-to-day basis. You can have a slave hard drive up to 30 gigabytes or 30 terabytes that would hold everything else, but you would want to transfer everything you use on a basis onto the solid state because the solid state just runs everything better. It opens it faster. I mean, it's just,
So
of
when we're
course, it's
looking at solid states, what kind of solid state are we getting? What would you recommend for this $500 build? How big of a solid state would you recommend?
240.
All right, so
A
200. That's
SanDisk
pretty.
240.
Yeah, that's
You
not a
can buy them
bad
at
solid
Walmart.
state at all. Sure
You
can,
can
and
buy them at Walmart.
I believe you could buy them at Walmart for $79.99 as well.
79.99.
Yep.
Yeah. Graphics card. As far as graphics card goes, you're on a budget because of the $500. You got to look at all the other components. My recommendation is going to be the 1050 Ti for this specific build. But with your graphics card, that is all up to the user. Um, it's all dependent on what you need the machine to do.
So if we're looking at a 1050 Ti, what kind of range is it putting us in? Now, obviously, we have the processor being an AMD Ryzen 3 1200, and we're pairing it with also 8 gigabytes of Corsair RAM, as well as a 240 gigabyte solid state drive. What is the 1050 Ti going to do for us as far as range in either graphic output or just overall playability?
In graphic output, it's going to do HDR perfect. I
So you're going
mean,
to be able to play these games in 4K with this.
no, not 4K, HDR, high
Oh,
def resolution, 1080p.
excuse me.
Yeah, high def in 1080p,
I was
it
thinking
would be
high
able to,
dynamic range.
yeah. um, But no, it will definitely be able to play any game that you throw at it. Maybe have some difficulties when you throw in like Witcher 3. You might have to turn it down to medium and play on ultra. But on a console, you're playing on medium at 30 frames per second or 60 frames per second on newer consoles. So, I mean, PC is always going to have that,
And
ability to fine tune every aspect.
oh, for sure. I mean, obviously being able to choose your FPS values, right,
Yeah.
for your frames, and that's huge,
And
right? And especially when we're talking about this build in specific, being that $500 holiday deal that people are going to be looking at to build if they want to get into PC gaming. So no, that's definitely interesting. And now, will it run The Witcher 3 on high or
I
medium?
would
I
say
think
I
you
would say
said medium,
medium. I would definitely say medium.
and it
Witcher
could
3
run it
is a
consistent.
very Witcher
It could
3
run
is
it
a very
consistent.
good benchmark. That's the
Yeah,
reason I mentioned the game because it is incredibly graphically demanding. It's incredibly processor demanding, and it's incredibly RAM demanding. RAM processor and video card, you could run a computer just off.
fair enough.
I mean, of course, in a hard drive, some sort of memory storage.
Yeah, of course.
But anyways, the last two parts, it's this is completely up to the user. Um, any microboard work for all of the parts listed. I would definitely recommend the Roswell FBM01 or the Xeon M Micro ATX board.
Those are
Um,
both excellent boards.
yes, any Micro ATX board would work. Um, Now, as far as case recommendations, that's up to you. It's just gotta fit a micro, and it's gotta fit your standards of aesthetics. I mean, it's completely up to you for the case. I'm not gonna even recommendation on a case because case is your preference.
Yeah, at that point, right, you have a small enough board, and with a 1050 Ti, they're not that big of a graphics card, and all your other components are kind of small. So you could go with like a standard, like for example, right? Obviously, just to kind of uh, give someone to compare something to. But if you're looking at a Dell tower at Walmart, right? You're looking at that tower, and it's a little compact. You could fit those parts inside of that tower
Yes,
just fine. Fair enough. So you can
100%.
go with any tower you want, and you
You
can
could
customize it to your heart's desire.
that I mean, honestly, my personal recommendation is the new build, which is no case whatsoever, and you actually mount it to the wall. That is
Mount it to
abs
the wall. Yeah,
yes.
yeah,
That
I love
that
it.
that is my dream. That is my dream because you put a plexiglass covering over it.
Yep.
You have the fans blowing in, and it works all the same. And you can see every aspect. Like you can watch the water flow down because you can set it up as freely roaming as you want to. I think it's just so cool.
No, it's awesome, man. Like I got a chance to see one of those builds ever,
Hmm.
and it was a buddy, and it wasn't on the wall, but it wasn't in a PC case either. He had taken a wooden desk that he was using for his PC monitor.
Hmm.
He cut out an opening into the bottom of the desk,
Yeah.
laid plexiglass over it, and he's able to take out the plexiglass whenever he wants, but he placed all of his PC parts inside of this wooden table, and and with plexiglass, and he has all of his hookups that come out to the back of the desk. All of your USBs and your HDMI's, they're all coming out to the back of the
Right.
desk for easy, convenient setup. And that is something that, I'm in agreement with you, right? Like, if you're someone who goes, I have all these parts, maybe you don't have the extra cash for a case. You don't have to have one. And that's one of the greatest things that, we're seeing now, right? Just to add to your point, in the revolution of PC gaming, we're
Well,
really starting to see these different
well,
things happen.
you can't necessarily. It's definitely not something you do on a budget because the reason, I mean, wall mounting, you have to have a non-conductive force. Like you have to use wood or you can't use metal. You can't use something that's going to cause the computer any kind of malfunction whatsoever.
Sure.
Wood is always the recommendation because it conducts no sort of electricity, it transfers no sort of electricity. It's an excellent choice. But it's as far as someone diving into the PC world and that,
Yeah, that's something that's definitely for more of the advanced
that would be something for more
builder.
of like the, just somebody that knows what they're doing.
Sure, yeah,
That's
just
all.
more advanced and they understand it a bit more
Right.
and they have just a bit more education, right, of how everything works and what they need to do.
Because
Um,
damaging the computer part, you won't even notice it. You won't even notice
I
it, and
know, man.
it's gonna happen.
It's absolutely crazy, right? For people who don't that maybe not like understand what he's saying, I'll give you give you a perfect example. I had a desktop that was running an i7 7700K processor, and it was the newest processor at the time, and um, something had happened, and I ended up having to take the side casing off of my computer. Now this is probably my fault, and it honestly at this point, yeah, it's my fault. I'm the one that took off the siding of the case. However, I had no idea that my processor had gotten fried. But something had happened when I took off the case and was moving some excess parts, and I had accidentally at some point touched my processor and didn't mean to, and I fried
Yes.
it. So for people who either have dealt with this or if you haven't dealt with this, please learn from my mistakes.
And
Please. And another thing also, it's just before you go, Nick, another thing as well, if you are not someone who is very confident in building computers, you could purchase these parts, and if you go to one of your local PC stores, and as long as you have everything there, I'm sure that you could probably pay a small fee for them to hook up the computer and have
yes,
everything
yeah,
running for you.
actually, one of the computer stores in town actually offers that in where we live.
Yep. No, I believe it does, and I believe there, and and obviously a bunch of other computer stores that are out there. So please, if you're trying to get into PC gaming and this is a build that you're very interested in, but you're not sure how to build it, order your parts. Then you can take your parts to your local PC store, and then from there they can set it all up for you, get you ready to go, and you'll be on to playing PC games in no time. But Nick, I cut you off. I didn't mean to. Go
Oh,
back
you're
to what
good.
you were saying.
The only thing I was saying was building a computer is, I don't want to say easy, but I don't want to say it's hard either. I mean, yes, you are looking at all these components and you're like, oh my God, how do I fit these together? How do I do this? Everything in that computer besides your motherboard is plug and play. Literally that simple. You plug it in the slot that it fits correctly and it works. As long as you're using the correct power and, the correct port, there's not a lot of places you can mess up because everything's of different sizes. Um, the only other two things that I didn't mention that are absolutely vital for building a computer is a anti-static screwdriver or a anti-static armband and thermal paste. And boom, there's $500. And you
Yep.
got yourself a brand new PC with the capabilities to, I don't want to say outperform a console, but maybe be exactly the same.
Fantastic. So I'm going to run back over the build for everyone one last time. Now, it's a $500 build. We're looking at an AMD Ryzen 3 1200 processor. We're looking at as a graphics card. We're looking at a GTX 1050 Ti. Then we're also looking at 8 gigabytes of Corsair RAM. And then we're also looking at a 240 gigabyte solid state drive. Now, if you would like to add other things to that build, you are obviously more than welcome to, as you can make any changes you'd like, being that a PC is completely customizable. However, this is our unique build for this episode of our podcast, and not only that, for the holiday season. As we know, at this time of year, there are a lot of people that are looking for the perfect gift for their son, grandson, daughter, granddaughter, whatever the case may be. you want to make sure that you have the perfect gift for your loved one. And we're here to help you out with great information about great PC builds, how to build them, where to take them, and all the information you need. Now, Nick, I'd like to thank you for your time. And Dustin as well, I'd like to thank you for your time on the podcast and taking the time out of your guys' day to come talk some gaming news and gaming culture with me. And honestly, it's been a blast, guys. So thank you so much for coming out,
Not a problem.
coming on here. I really
No
appreciate
problem.
it.
We'll have to do this again.
Oh, for sure, man. I've really enjoyed it. But for those who are listening to this podcast, that is going to do it for us for the 5th episode of the Nfinite podcast. Remember, you guys can check us out every single week on Wednesday. Uploads are at 5 p.m. Eastern. I know last week we uploaded on Thursday, but we shouldn't have any more technical issues or delays in our updates from here on out. And I just would like to take a second to thank all of our viewers that are taking the time out of their day to listen to us speak about gaming news and gaming culture and getting their fill of the news that they need for the day. And honestly, guys, from the bottom of my heart, I truly do appreciate it. Gaming is something I love. It's something that we all love and we have a wonderful passion for, and we just love sharing it with the world. And for those who give their time to listen to us and give us a chance to really show what we're capable of and what we can bring to the table. So thank you for everyone that out there that is an Nfinite podcast supporter. You guys are awesome. And also, if you guys have social media, make sure to go onto Twitter and at Nfinite Red Ghost. Send me a message on Twitter and I will follow you guys. All you got to do is show me that you were watching the Nfinite podcast and you're getting a follow. So thank you guys again for taking the time to listen to the Nfinite podcast. And we hope that you guys have a wonderful day and a wonderful evening and an absolutely amazing holiday. And we'll catch you guys after the holidays. Thank you guys so much and peace.